Hello, everyone. Welcome. Chad Martin with Data Prep U here. Happy Thanksgiving, first off, to everyone. We are here with our weekly live build of our weekly challenge. So, this is the Alteryx Weekly Challenge. This week's is titled Challenge 295 Thanksgiving Feast. Now, this is under the kind of beginner level data preparation side of things. So, why don't we go ahead and hop right into it? Now, at this point, as a reminder, the only thing that I've done so far is read through, honestly, even just the first paragraph of this. I have not actually read through the entire thing. I have not downloaded this, and I have not pre-solved this workflow. This is all from scratch and live. So you're going to see, for better or worse, where I make mistakes, where I resolve those mistakes, and ultimately how we build out a solution in the thought process on how we actually go through to complete this challenge. So let's go ahead and hop over to our screen. One moment, please. So let's go ahead and read through this. The solution for last week's is here. So this one states that the Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S. Involves a lot of food. Take a closer look, or let's take a closer look at what people typically serve in different U.S. regions. This data set that we have contains information about what type of dishes are served at Thanksgiving dinners in the U.S. households, including types of protein, cranberry, if they use gravy or not, types of sides, pies, desserts, and in which regions they are. Each row of the data set corresponds to one household and only one household. The challenge, now it looks like we have three tasks here. Challenge is to, number one, find the total number of food dishes, protein, cranberry, gravy sides, and pies and dessert served in each household. Task two is to find the average number of dishes. Task three is to determine the total number of pies served for each U.S. region and create a pie chart to show the results in percentage. The bonus is, what is the most popular combination of side dishes and how many households are serving it? So let's go ahead. So there is a data source here on GitHub if you are interested in just kind of seeing where that data source lives. But ultimately here, let's go into our actual start file. And I'm also realizing, as I normally do, I forgot to even highlight my mouse. So, yep, here's the beauty of a Monday morning live stream. So let's go ahead and download by clicking the download button. Here's our YXZP file. I'm going to go ahead and click on this to unpack it. And here we go. It is an Alteryx package. Do you want to import it? Yes, I do. So there's my start file. Let's go ahead and import this. It was successful. We're loading the workflow. Now let's see what we're working with. Now we do have those different tasks. What I'm going to do is actually put my my actual screen over here so I can read through what we're building. So here we go. The output contains we actually have four different outputs based off of this one data source. Now, for those of you who know me, you also know that the very first thing that I'm going to do is actually run the workflow. So keyboard shortcuts here, Control R, run the workflow. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we got run the workflow. We have 872 records here. Let's move this up just a little bit. Now we have four different outputs. I can see there's the protein, cranberry, whether or not you have, and the reason why cranberry is its own category, for those of you who aren't familiar or have never taken or experienced or participated in a U.S. Thanksgiving dinner, there are multiple different types of cranberry. There's like a canned type that's kind of this like gelatinous jello, or there's, my personal favorite is more of the homemade, where it's actually more of like kind of I don't even know how you describe it, but it's just very, very delicious if it's more of a homemade one. So whether or not they have gravy, the sides of Brussels sprouts, carrots, cornbread, and so forth, it looks like we've got a lot of different types of food in here, along with that region over on the side. So the first thing is output task number one. Let's list out the households. So this is numbering the households along with the count of the food dishes. So this one might be relatively easy because this looks like a direct correlation going straight across. So let's say that if each record represents a household, the first thing I'm going to do for task one is to go in the preparation category. Let's start with a record ID here. And instead of calling it record ID, we're actually going to call this household. So yes, you can rename this. So household, and then Control R to do a quick run. And then also this is set at the first column. So there we go. Now the next thing is where we're actually looking at the count of food dishes. This is an interesting one because this is counting straight across. So this is essentially counting if it is not null all the way across the board. So there are a couple of different ways we could do this. Now, there's a transpose and a summarize. That probably would be one of the easier ones in this particular case. So I'm going to follow that. And let's go ahead with a quick transpose here, where we will group on that household here. That's our key column, which means that we now have, after that transpose, that household number here with each of the value, or excuse me, each of the names along with that value here. So after this, it's a relatively easy summarize here where we can then group on that household. And then under value, there's actually a count non-null. So count non-null in there. Now let's just do a quick double check and let's see. Household number 1 should have 13. Household number 2 should have 23. Let's do a quick check. Ooh, interesting. So that one is actually 11 and then 12. So there's probably a few food dishes in here that aren't necessarily counted as food because there's, let's see, we got carrots. Let's do a quick look. Green beans and casserole. So somehow there are 2 in here. Are we 2 off on everyone? 13 and 23 and then 11 and 22. So there are a couple of food dishes in here that maybe aren't necessarily an actual food dish in here. So cheesecake, cookies, ice cream. The region, that's what it is. That's what we want. So let's go ahead and make sure we are also taking into account that region. Let's see if there's anything else in here that we want to do. Maybe not. So there we go, 11. But now, here we go, 12 and then 22. So now we're at 11 and 22. So something with the Middle Atlantic for some reason, that very first record, there's something in there that is actually not lining up. But let's check out household number 3, 11, 12, and 18. Let's see what we have over here. So then there's 11, 12, and 18, 11, 6, 15. After that, 11, 6, 15. So for some reason, that very first record on the first one with Middle Atlantic is not lining up for me. And I don't know why, but all of the rest of them do seem to be doing that. They do seem to be lining up, which is very interesting. So let's go ahead and then also add in that region there. So we have then the household count of food dishes in U.S. region. So then we're going to say count of food dishes and then a quick run. There we go. Again, my household number 1 is a little bit different because for some reason it's actually counting 1 extra, but it's not consistent on everything else. So that's probably going to drive me a little bit nuts in here. So there may be a couple of other ways that we could do this, but let's move on. Output task number 2. So this is part number 1. Let's go ahead and add a quick little browse tool after this. And I'm actually going to change the annotation. So as a reminder, on the left-hand side, there's an annotation, and we're going to call this output, let's say task number 1. So now we have that as task number 1. Now task number 2 is the average count of food dishes per region. Well, since everything is already transposed in here, let's go ahead and back into our favorites. I'm going to add in a summarize underneath this. So we have all of the different food dishes. Let's go ahead and go into that region. Let's do a group by in that region. Let's look at the incoming data. And we want to do an average count of the food dishes. So what we want to do is first do a count of the food dishes. So that's going to be a key here. So between each region, now we want to still do in that value a count of, not the count, but a count of non-nulls. All right. So here we go. There is the non-nulls in here, 1471. And then what we want to do is actually, I'm sorry, we have that, maybe instead of doing that, because we need to do a count of the food dishes for each individual household. So it actually is going to be based off of this. I'm actually doing something a little bit wrong here, and that I'm going to change it over here instead. And then let's do a quick rerun, because the incoming data should still be by household with the count of food dishes. Now, since we have this, let's throw in one more, or this summarize instead is going to be that group by of US region. But since we don't necessarily have that value because I renamed it, what I'm going to do is take that count, and now we're going to go into numeric and then do the average. Now the average is probably going to be thrown off a little bit on mine because in this particular case, we have the average count of food dishes. I already pulled out the food dishes, the non-null food dishes in here. So let's see, West, South, Central is 12. In this case, West, South, Central is 12. And I believe, is there a sort of like sorting in here that we have? So let's take a look at our sorting. How did they actually sort this? It looks like descending order. So let's go ahead and do a quick average count descending, because it's then going to make it just a little easier to match this up. So West, South, Central is 12.43. New England is 12.16, or I guess 12.44, 12.16, 12.15, and here we have 12.19, 12.09, and 12. So I'm getting a little bit different, but honestly, I'm pretty confident that what I'm actually building out here is going to be a little more likely, because I'm doing, and again, if you have something different in here, please let me know, because for me, this is so far making sense in that we've got the West, South Central, 12.43. But for some reason, again, because we had that different count of the food dishes, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. So now in this case, maybe one of the things is we need to actually pull out protein, cranberry, gravy, sides, pies, and desserts. So one of the options that we potentially could have, so anything that begins with a side, you know what, I bet that's it, going back. But then we have the pies, so those are desserts. Pie, dessert, pies, and desserts. Is there anything that is not that? So yeah, so we went through, we counted all the non-nulls. Everything else is either a pie, a dessert, a side. For some reason, again, unless, well, that's going to be essentially the same thing. Yeah, I'm not actually seeing how they actually got that incorrect. Oh, whether or not they have gravy. Got it. That's going to be it. So that's probably going to change things up. Now, that's going to be interesting because the cranberry, if it is none, that's where I messed up here. So whether or not total number of food dishes, so this one, cranberry here. And so what I have to actually do is whether or not they actually had cranberry first in this first one. So that's where I messed up. All right, so let's do this. Now that we've got this, first thing I want to do is filter out any sort of where cranberry does not equal none. So let's do this, and we're gonna do a couple of different things here. We're gonna say the value equals, and first off that, or we want to say the name. I'm sorry, name equals cranberry. Actually, you know what? Let's even do this. Let's break this back a little bit. I'm gonna do a filter. We're gonna say name equals cranberry in this case, then do a custom filter, and we're gonna say and value here equals, and then we're going to say none. Okay, let's do a quick run on this, because now what we're ending up with is all those different values out of this. So here we got this, we got the region, we got the different households over here, we got the different count of those food dishes, because now we should have a couple of different 124 records versus 16,000. So again, I did something completely wrong here, because what I should have done now, for some reason, we have this, and then I should have, oh, the opposite. I needed to do the opposite. Okay. Name does not equal cranberry. Actually, we can even leave that as is right now, because then let's go ahead and move this browse over. I'm going to copy and paste this summarize tool. Run this, because this should also give us that 11 and then 22, and then we have out of output number 1, 11 and 22. So we're doing our part here. So we're actually looking at cranberry and the value equals none, because coming into this, we should have, we removed essentially any values where that cranberry did not exist. So that is our real answer here. In fact, I'm actually going to change this back over to the other side here. I kind of like things coming out of the true side, just personal preference. I've had some very interesting conversations around that. So let's say name does not equal cranberry, and value does not equal none. And I think we need to actually have this as an or statement, which is very interesting here. So there we go. We should only have 124, because since we're doing not and not, it's like a double negative. So instead of an and, you have to have an or. That's kind of an important thing in here. All right, so now we should have 11, 22, 11, 12, 18 going into output 1, 11, 22, 11, 12, 18. That gravy got me. Gravy always does. All right. Now let's go in and see if let's see how our average stacks up at this point. So again, rerunning everything with that average, 12.28, 12.11, 12.19. So I'm still getting some interesting things in here. So let's see what I'm missing. Find the average number of dishes served in the US for each region. So dishes, how do we determine what an actual dish is? What type of dishes are served? Things in dinners in US households, including types of protein, cranberry, if they use gravy or not, types of sides, pies, desserts, and in which region they are. So those are individual unique dishes. So I'm sure that I'm missing another simple thing here, because we have the count of dishes, right here for each individual household, but then we're going in and we're doing a grouping on the US region, then taking an average of those dishes in here, and then doing a quick sort on that one more time. Let's do a quick little run. Yeah, 12.28 for West, South, Central. I'm getting my numbers in the right, or my regions in the right spot, so they're ordering properly. Let's see if anything else. East, South, Central is 12. East, South, Central, in my case, is 12.03. So let's come back to that. So the last piece, though, or the next one, is to create a chart. So in this case, for some reason, let's go back to our profile. What we're doing is taking that average. So we're looking at the total number of pies served for each US region and create a pie chart because we're creating pies. So let's look at anything that contains the word pie in it. All right. So let's first off do let's do another filter at the bottom here. So this is going to be task number 3. So I don't believe that task number 2 is correct. Maybe we'll come back to that. But let's just update that annotation task number 2. And then here, we're actually going to then start creating in here anything where, let's start again with our basic filter here where the name, and instead of equals pie, we're actually going to say left name, comma 3 equals pie. That's what we're doing here. All right. So left name 3 equals pie. Now we're still going to have a lot of non-nulls in here. So this is saying what's not the bonus, determine the total number of pies served for each US region, create a pie chart. Total number of pies served. So looking at our chart, but that's looking at a percentage for some reason. Oh, the results in percentage. So we need a total essentially. So let's then, we could probably do a couple of different things in here. So we could probably do the different types of pies. In reality, what we probably want to do is then filter out the nulls or count the non-nulls for the different regions. So once again, summarize in here. All right. And we're going to take that region, we're going to group by, and then that value, let's do a count of non-nulls one more time. All right. So we should have this. Now, the last thing we need is an actual percent of the total. Now we could do this a couple of different ways. Crosstab actually has a really convenient percent total option in here if you were to do that crosstab. Another way to do this would just simply be to do a total summarize or another summarize on here just to get that total, append it back and do a quick formula in here. Let's explore the crosstab real quick. I'm curious to see if there's something in here where we could actually say do a grouping on that US region in here, the values. Let's say that's the value here. And what we're going to do, we can't really do a concatenate at this point because we're really just trying to figure out, is there a value in here? Now, I could also think of potentially another way to do this. So we're grouping on region. Our column headers potentially could also be region. That's a little redundant. You know, I feel like I'm going to have to do a lot of work just to get this in a spot to do this. So I'm going to do the easy way here. We're going to add in one more summarize where we want to take a total. So let's take that count and we're just going to sum that total count. We're just going to call this total desserts or total pies. Total pies. All right. So that output should look like this. Now what we're going to do is a quick little append on the join category here. So there is the append fields. So there we got that total. Now finally back into favorites. Let's throw a formula tool in here and we're going to create a new one and we're going to call this percent total. If I spell it right, there we go. And this is going to be a double. I think that their overall output was, so instead of a double, you know what, let's do this as a fixed decimal. And we're actually going to say in this particular case, what were our values? What did we actually run with in here? So a quick run. So I can say count. There we go. Divided by total. And then we're actually going to do a times 100. But then I also round over here. So we're going to wrap this in a round function. But you know what? We don't necessarily even need to do. One thing I'd like to point out is, and now this is a real key function here, I was getting ready to put in a nested statement. And yeah, you can put in all kinds of nested statements in here, but you don't have to. That's the key. You do not have to do that. But what we can do is create a new function in here, and look at this. Now that we've created a calculated column, now we can actually leverage this. So what I want to do now is just do a round here on the percent total. All right, and the multiple in this case is going to be 0.01. So that's essentially going to round this off. In our fixed decimal, we're actually going to do 2 here. Actually, we don't necessarily need to do that. We could do this for a 6, and then we're going to do that round with that fixed decimal. So now that does still have 6 in here, but that very easily allows us to then update that final fixed decimal and say 19.2. So we won't get any conversion errors because we're only dropping the zeros essentially at this point. Now, our final result where there was like a 7 in there somewhere, that did say just 7. That's okay, because the last piece of this, and now this is not sort of anything else other than just going into the reporting tool. Let's add in one more chart here. So we do need to do a quick run to get the data into the chart first. Then we can click configure chart, and now we're going to go through and we're going to add a layer. Now in this case, we're not going to add a scatter. We are going to add a pie chart, and our values are going to be on that percent total. The label is going to be on that US region in here. Now their result at this point was a little bit different because theirs actually added in that label into the actual chart itself. Now, there are a couple of different ways we could potentially do this. Now, we could just hide the overall labels, which is very interesting whenever you do that, because now you can't really see anything, but our interactivity part allows us to mouse over and we can see certain things. But under the chart itself, there is a way to actually add in those titles here based off of your actual, whoops, I'm not actually going to do that part. There is a way where you can actually add in your labels onto that specific value itself. So now clicking on the label here allows us to go into the legend and then hide the legend. So now we actually have the overall layer. Now I'm going to go ahead and close out of this, add a browse tool, and then see how we do. Look at that. No legend. We have our labels. Everything else is set up. Now, my color scheme is a little bit different than theirs. I'm not really worried about that because I was just using the default here. Now, there is a bonus. What is the most popular combination of side dishes and how many households are serving it? So there is a bonus over here that looks like it is just a YXDB where it says it's concatenating a value of the most possible and how many households are serving it. What is this? The most popular combination of side dishes. I'm going to leave this part just because in the interest of time, I want to try to keep this video a little bit smaller, and I don't want to fumble around, to be perfectly honest, right now in going through each of these to determine the most popular side dish. But what I am going to say is please comment on this. Let us know how you came up with this. Now, in my mind, I'm already thinking of the ability just to go in and look at the original data and doing a grouping on the value of those sides. So filtering out the side dishes, doing a grouping on that side dish, and then doing a count. So the most popular combination of side dishes. So I see a couple of different things in here. Once again, going back to here, it looks like there are a couple of different things where they are combining everything all at once. So this could potentially even be an iterative macro where it's going through and looping through different combinations of those sides. It might even be something a lot simpler where we're actually just grouping all those sides together. We're concatenating those sides, the sides where there are not null, and then doing a count of those and then a sort essentially. And you know what? As I'm thinking about this, why don't we just go ahead and do that? Let's just do it while we're in here. Let's do a quick filter off after the transpose. So this is going to be bonus here. Let me go ahead and label my other thing here called task number 3. So I'm going to label task number 3. Now in this case, we're going to go into our filter. Let's go into that bonus, and we're going to say that name here because that name should actually contain a side. All right, so name equals side, but in this case, then we're going to do that updated filter, left, open parentheses, name, comma 4 equals side. And so how many side dishes do we actually have in here? So now we're filtering out those sides. Then once again, we're going to throw in a summarize tool. But in this case, we've already filtered out the sides, okay? But what I do want to do is group on that household first and then concatenate or count that value, or I guess it could actually concatenate the value in this case. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to also equals side, and we're going to say and value. We'll say not is null value. All right. So let's do that. I want to see if I get all of this out of here. Perfect. Look at that. So we have only sides, and we only have things here that actually fit. So that's going to make this pretty easy at this point, just to first do a group by here and then take that value, and we're going to concatenate this. So go to string, concatenate, and it looks like there was a comma separator. If we look at our little bonus here, they gave us a little view where it is a comma separated value. So now what happens is, guess what? We have all of these different values in here. So my initial thought is actually kind of irrelevant. We still have 869 values in here. What this does, because of that concatenation, it should concatenate everything in line, in order. So now what we should be able to do is go into that concat value and quite simply do a group by and a count after this. And then without even running this, I'm going to take a little descending sort on that count, and then take a quick look here. There is a count of 38, which matches up to the other side of things here. And if we really want to take this a step further, sample where we actually do a first one value, concat value, and then count. I think they labeled it something a little bit different. Nope, they didn't. Not even that. Concat value and count. So let's go ahead and add a browse. I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut this time. Control Shift and the letter B as in browse to add a browse tool on my highlighted tool. Update this to say task number 4 bonus. All right. Run that and check this out. We got that count. We got our pie chart, which actually looks pretty good here. The only thing that I was missing is there's something in task number 2 that I missed. I'm going to go back and review this before actually posting my solution, but I encourage everyone, where did I miss this? Post something in the comments. Let us know. I mean, I was trying to do all this in the last 20 minutes or so, so let us know how we did in that. Where did I miss? Where did I go wrong in here? I missed something where my averages are off just a little bit, and maybe there's even a clue. Average count of food dishes, U.S. region. Even in mine, average count of food dishes, U.S. region. Something is a little bit off. I missed something somewhere, and it's probably something like the gravy or one of the other dishes. So I'm going to review a little bit before posting my solution, but I hope everyone enjoyed this and got something out of it. If you have any more questions or you're really curious about learning more about how to use some of the different functions, or even just enable your team, build up your team, please shoot us an email at support@dataprepu.com. We will be happy to kind of walk through this with you. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Hope everyone in the U.S. has a wonderful Thanksgiving this week. If you're traveling, please, be safe as always, and we will see you next week. Thanks again.